TW Wrestling Talk here. Another edition of the show here on YouTube. Uh, Thanksgiving week. Um, Interesting edition here of the show. Coming right off of um, Survivor Series, which is what I'm going to talk about in the first part of the show. Um, Later on, we'll get into the direction of the World Championship and the WWE Championship, and later after that, gonna we're gonna talk about some talent that WWE has a chance to elevate right now, um, in the WWE scene. Um, Survivor Series, I'd have to say, was a pretty mediocre pay-per-view overall. Um, it wasn't anything really bad about it. Wasn't anything really great about it. I think across the board, there was kind of a little bit of disappointment across the board in each match. Um, but again, there's nothing major that I thought was wrong with the pay-per-view. Nothing majorly great with the pay-per-view. Um, starting starting with the first match, the opening match of the pay-per-view. It seemed like another thrown together tag team match. Um, that that sometimes shows up on these pay-per-views and on Raw and SmackDown at times. Um, First of all, I mean, I was under the impression that the three-man band was going to be facing Tyson Kidd and Justin Gabriel via the Bleacher Report. Um, the day before the pay-per-view. That didn't happen. We had a mixed tag team match with a mixed bag of guys. Um, we had big guys like Tensei, and we had flyers like the team of Sin Cara and Rey Mysterio in there. And it was, I mean, it was a pretty, you know, it was a thrown together match. It wasn't terrible, but it was what it was. You throw a match together, it's not going to be a huge deal. Um, 9 times out of 10. So that's but there's better to come later in the pay-per-view. Having said that, um, there was a Divas match, which was Divas Championship match, Caitlyn against Eve, which was all but 3 or 4 minutes. Um, awesome. It was I think it's evident that Eve is the diva right now. It's pretty evident, I think, that WWE is really intent on only really having one diva um, be a big deal as in the amongst divas, right? I, Caitlyn, and I think Caitlyn losing to Eve again just kind of goes to show that Eve is the diva right now, and AJ doesn't count. Sorry, sorry, AJ fans. But that's what happens when you only wrestle one match every 2 months. Um, so that's that. And then things pick up a little bit. Things get a little better. We have a decent United States Championship match featuring R-Truth taking on Cesaro for the title. Cesaro coming out on top predictably over R-Truth. It was a decent like match for um, a pay-per-view United States Championship match. It was pretty good. Both guys, I think, looking pretty good. For what it was, this match was one of the less disappointing matches on the card, I think, of the evening. Um, Good match, even though it was only put together in a few weeks that we had between Hell in a Cell and this pay-per-view. And then following the heels of that was the World Heavyweight Championship match between Big Show and Sheamus, which it was pretty interesting. I a little disappointed because it was a little shorter, um, and not quite as as big of a clash as the first match between these two guys. But I can understand that given this second clash between the two was kind of um, more to create something to work with for the weeks to come to build up to a third clash between these guys. Um, you know the intensity of the match, just the tone of it, I think was a slight step below what they had at Hell in a Cell. Um, and obviously the length of it, it had the odd, it had the 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 controversial referee finish with Big Show, pulling the ref into what was going to be a brogue kick into Big Show's face. The ref took it, and we saw what happened there. Tending to the referee, Sheamus eventually turns around right into a knockout punch, gets pinned. Big Show retains. Um, all in all, not too bad. Again, creates another situation where they can build from this. And even though I felt the reversal decision um, disqualifying Big Show was a little bit forced upon us. I feel um, it helps set up a third clash between these guys, which will you know more likely be a bigger deal than the second one. But this was you know that's what this one was for. I think kind of built extending the story a little bit. Furthermore, um, we see Sheamus lay 30 chair shots or so on the Big Show after this match, as he's crawling up the ramp, which again more heat to further push this feud and extend it in the coming weeks. Um, and yeah, and then of course Sheamus lays the bro kick on him, and makes for some interesting heat that was going to continue on the Raw the next night and probably the weeks to come. The weeks to come up until tables, ladders, and chairs. So overall, not bad stuff there. The match wasn't quite as good as the first one though. And then from there we had the traditional Survivor Series elimination tag match, 5-on-5, Team Ziggler against Team Foley. Um, this match was disappointing for a couple reasons. One, it seemed like WWE was, rushing the first five to six guys out of this match. Um, it seems like WWE with these elimination matches, they tend to rush the first, half of guys or the majority of guys out of the match and just um, and you can tell it's obvious. And I mean, for instance, Kane and Daniel Bryan, I mean, they were out of the match within what, like 2 minutes it seemed like. Um, and not long ago, these guys were, you know, having half hour of camera time on Raw and SmackDown not too long ago. Now it seems like WWE, doesn't want them to be on TV longer than 5 minutes. So it's pretty obvious to me there. I don't totally understand why, but I know they were trying to tone it down, but now it seems like they tone them down a little too much, and I think they rushed them out of the match too quickly, um, as well as a few other guys, Damien Sandow. But before we knew it, we had the Miz in as the legal partner. Um, the guy that is coming off momentum of this face turn, which has been long overdue, I think. Um, Coming off the momentum of being, perhaps the X factor of this match, being the guy that flip flopped from the bad guys to the good guys, effectively making this face turn. Um, and the guy that is on the cover of the pay per view. And what do we get? Um, well, we get a unique, pretty good 2 minute run for a little. We have the Miz, you know laying the smack down out there, to quote The Rock. Um, you know, and he running with his momentum, and he pins David Otunga, or was it Wade Barrett? He pins one of those guys. Forgive my fuzzy memory here, but the point is, he has about a 2-minute run. He eliminates one guy, and then within like the next 30 seconds, Alberto Del Rio eliminates The Miz. And I'm sitting there I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's it, because The Miz was the guy on the cover of the pay-per-view. This is Survivor Series is typically supposed to be, the fourth biggest pay-per-view of the year. It's supposed to be, better than 2/3 of the other pay-per-views. This pay-per-view, and he's the cover guy of it, and you mean to tell me that all he did was be have like a 2-minute run, eliminate one guy, and then just get eliminated, within the next 30 seconds? I mean, if you think about it, he was just another guy in the match. He wasn't, he didn't stand out that much at all. If you look at it, if you were to rank the guys, the top 10 guys that had an impact on this pay-per-view, if anything, Miz might be 10th at best, if you think about it. And this was the guy that they put on the cover of the pay-per-view. So I was disappointed with how they barely even used Miz when they put him on the cover of the pay-per-view, and they flip him over to the good guys, to Team Foley here. And I'll get into more talk about the Miz later. But match ends with Orton going back for a punt kick, which I got me excited, even though I think Orton should save his next punt kick for when he's actually heel again. But anyhow, I was excited to see this. Ziggler, however, out of nowhere laid a super kick on Orton and pinned him, winning the team, for his team. So I found that a little interesting, taking a page from, Shawn Michaels' playbook, and we'll see if that sparks some more things, in the future with him. But lastly, that after that, obviously, that brings us to the main event match, the triple threat for the WWE Championship. Again, another match that was a little short, I think. Slight disappointment there. You figure there had to be some kind of controversial finish, because WWE just doesn't seem to have, they don't want Ryback to lose clean, obviously. They don't want him to win the championship. And what they did at the end, I think that's fine. Having him get ganged up. But as far as the match itself goes, Ryback, I think, looked pretty good. CM Punk, I think, looked pretty good. John Cena was John Cena. He, it seemed like half the time he was either doing a signature move or going for an attitude adjustment attempt, just for the hell of it. And it just, to me, it wasn't, it's typical John Cena. Wasn't good on his end. There's a double team suplex on Ryback through the announce table, and that was interesting. And then, of course, later on, Ryback gets put through the other announce table. And by those guys from NXT, and it throws an interesting curveball in the story. Surprisingly, Cena gets pinned clean here, by CM Punk. So perhaps there's some perhaps that put a closure on this this feud. At least it appears, which to me is an odd closure to it. It seems like a quiet closure, because given what next night on Raw, but anyhow, it seems like that was closure on that. John Cena was not the guy that got ripped off here. Ryback was, but Cena got pinned. So, um, I, sort of a predictable outcome, but nevertheless, wasn't bad, and I have no problem with that whatsoever with what they did. But again, the match was a little short. Cena seems to have nothing better to do but to, the majority of the time, be attempting his same old signature moves or finishing maneuvers. So, you know, take that however you want. So that's, again, about a 3-star, I'd say, for the pay-per-view, no better. This there were pay-per-views that were better than this in the year that normally aren't supposed to be. Extreme Rules, probably better than this. Night of Champions, probably better than this. Hell in a Cell, maybe at the same level, but probably I wouldn't consider that worse than this pay-per-view. So, you know, that's how it goes. All right, that will move us on to the next segment of this edition of TW Wrestling Talk.